Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Center for Financial Security for our webinar today, Strategies for Creating a More Accessible and Inclusive Financial Coaching Program. My name is Lionheart, and I'm the Outreach Specialist for the Center for Financial Security here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My co-host for today's webinar and co-creator of the study will be presenting on today's webinar. Her name is Sarah Nowakowski, and she is our project assistant here at the Center for Financial Security. We'll begin our webinar today with some comments from Regina Sally, who will be with us from the Annie E. Casey Foundation, who both motivated this study and who supported the work. We will then hear from Sarah, who will give an overview of study background and methodology. And then we'll have presenters from 3 organizations that participated in the case study who will provide insights from their organizations. And then I will then give a short summation of the key takeaways and recommendations. We will then have time for a question and answer portion, so please feel free to submit questions in the box at the bottom of your screen throughout the webinar. And I believe Regina Sally is on the line now to share a few words with us.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this webinar. Just wanted to say a little bit about the impetus for this brief and getting us to this point. The foundation has an increasing focus around race, ethnicity, and inclusion, and as I manage the portfolio related to financial coaching, one of the questions that we had was how financial coaching is actually happening and being implemented across the country, but also who's receiving the coaching services and whether or not services and the coaching approach is being adapted to meet cultural specific needs. And so I would like to thank first and foremost the University of Wisconsin-Madison Center for Financial Security for carrying out this work and continuing to contribute to the field. I'm hoping that you'll gain a lot of insight from today's webinar and look forward to today's webinar discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that context, Regina. That was really helpful. And I'm very excited to introduce our presenters for today's webinar. We have Peggy Garcia-Marquez. She is financial coaching faculty at the Central New Mexico Community College, and she's also a financial aid officer at the University of New Mexico, Valencia. Luz Contreras is the lead financial coach with Wings, located in Dallas, Texas. And Lucia Reño is the Director of Asset Building Programs with Mission Economic Development Agency located in San Francisco, California. Thank you all so much for being here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to provide us some background.
So the Annie E. Casey really prompted us here at CFS to work and pursue this study to explore accessibility, equity, and inclusion in financial coaching. And so CFS had 4 major objectives when we were approaching this study. First, we were really seeking to start to identify and shed some light on some of the barriers or different obstacles that various communities and populations might face in accessing financial coaching. Second, we were really hoping to share firsthand experiences from organizations from across the nation and some of their innovative strategies that they've employed to achieve better accessibility and improve impacts with the different communities that they are serving through their financial coaching programs. Third, we were trying to collect from interviews and from these firsthand experiences and use that information to identify some common themes and create applicable recommendations for other organizations that they could adapt and really integrate into their financial coaching programs. And finally, we were hoping to promote a continued conversation around this important topic of equity and inclusion and promote some greater future research in the topic. And so to try to accomplish these goals, we reached out to organizations across the country that either themselves had expressed interest in participating in the study or were referred from other organizations in our network. We were seeking to really include organizations that work with different populations and that represent a variety of geographic locations. And we were able to capture input from 7 different organizations that are located in both rural and urban areas. And these organizations were from the West Coast, the East Coast, the Midwest, and from southern locales. With each organization, we held approximately hour-long telephone interviews, and these interviews were very conversational in nature, and we were trying to give interviewees a chance to share what they thought was most interesting and what they thought was most important related to their experiences in working with populations. And then from these interviews and in creating our brief, we really tried to capture and highlight some of what we thought were the most unique and most interesting aspects of the interviews as case studies in a brief, and then use the interviews to identify key factors that another organization and its program could use to develop or could employ, and use those to create recommendations for other organizations related to accessibility and inclusion. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Peggy, who will share some more information about her organization and some of the strategies that they employ there.
Thank you, Sarah. So the University of New Mexico Valencia campus is situated about 40 miles south of Albuquerque under these beautiful Manzano Mountains. We serve a little over 2,000 students. 800 of those are dual credit high school students. 2/3 of our students are female, 2/3 are Latino, Hispanic, and 2/3 are part-time students. Half of our students receive a Pell Grant. In this county, the per capita income is approximately $20,000, and about 65% of our county residents drive to Albuquerque to work. So a 2015 study out of Ohio State and numerous others have identified financial stress as the premier cause of poor academic performance among college students. So we wanted to create a financial coaching program that would help alleviate that stress for our students with the goal of helping them achieve better academic success. And these are the 3 goals: that our students understand the federal requirements to remain in good standing with their financial aid awards, to decrease their dependence on student loans and get more scholarships, and most importantly, to better manage their lump sum financial aid awards. So I know if I only got paid twice a year, I would not be able to manage my money very well, and yet that is what we expect of our college students. And so part of the proceeds of the Powerball lottery in New Mexico are earmarked for scholarships for New Mexico high school and high school equivalency graduates. And it pays about 85% of their tuition at state institutions for 4 years. So we brought together the incoming class for a freshman financial fair. It's a 1-day conference focusing totally on managing financial aid and other financial aids and looking over their entire college plan. And for the students already not meeting the federal standards, we created a more intensive program that includes financial education and individual coaching at intervals throughout the semester. And then we offer similar services to all students who self-select to attend. So for the students who are not meeting the academic requirements right now, they have to submit an appeal if they have extenuating circumstances. And after we implemented the Freshman Financial Coaching Initiative, we saw a sharp drop in the number of students needing to submit an appeal. Now, we can't completely attribute it to our program yet. We'll need to do more research, but we believe it's partly due to incoming students understanding the requirements from the beginning. For example, knowing that dropping a class can affect their financial aid. And anecdotally, we've seen students coming in for coaching when making those decisions rather than just dropping their classes online. But the really huge difference that we've seen from 38% to 86% is in the number of students who were approved on an appeal plan and actually completed the requirements of that plan and returned to good financial aid standing. And again, we'll have to look at this trend over the long term to prove the correlation and causation. This is what our students are saying after participating in financial education and coaching. The picture on the top left shows students using fake money and an envelope budget system to manage their actual financial aid awards and actual expenses for the entire semester. And one thing that we found is that in the workshop surveys, the workshops around values and limiting beliefs and growth mindset have really made an insignificant impact on students. After these types of workshops, we seem to see more students coming in to seek individual coaching. So I read this book, Scarcity, after attending the Assets Conference in 2014, and it really made an impact on my work. So if you've ever thought people in poverty don't know how to plan, or they live in crisis mode, or they're always making decisions based on the moment, I invite you to consider the theories in this book. And it is that having more needs and resources requires more brain power. So therefore, what we may consider small decisions or even non-decisions can take a considerable amount of attention, effort, and time for someone living in poverty. And what I also learned is that our own processes in our programs can actually create the barriers themselves. But the good news is that small changes can make a big difference. Something else that I've recently been reading a lot about is the so-called culture of poverty. So in this 1959 book, Oscar Lewis suggested 50 traits of people in poverty, that there was a subculture, and that they are lazy, dependent on drugs and alcohol, that are single families with absent fathers, they don't care about education, and that they make stupid financial decisions that keep them in poverty, while completely discounting societal conditions that contributed them to being in poverty in the first place. Well, people in power jumped on this bandwagon, and since this theory villainized the poor, it made being in poverty their own fault and called them takers. So if we blame people for their own poverty, then we don't have to look at ourselves, our politics, and our policies that actually serve or benefit from keeping people in poverty. And this affected national policy for decades and continues today. In the Reagan era, the myth of the welfare queen was created, and this was a woman of color driving a Cadillac, squeezing out babies to get more welfare. During the Clinton era, this was talked about a lot, and the message then was that people had to earn it, quote unquote. So that's when the work requirements came in, although data shows that 85% on people receiving public benefits work at least one job and 63% work two or more. Another one is the proposal of drug testing for welfare recipients, although the states that have done the drug testing have only found minuscule instances of fraud. And just this week, we heard a United States representative say that people who can't afford health care shouldn't spend their money on a new iPhone. Since the 1970s, multiple teams of researchers have debunked Oscar Lewis's theory as bad science. His sample size was a whopping 5 families, thus the title of the book, observed for one day. And through empirical research methods, the data shows that there is no culture of poverty, but the damage was done. What the theory did contribute to creating was a culture of classism, blame, victim shaming, and low expectations. So I am constantly reading and listening to webinars and subscribe to a slew of listservs that keep me up to date with current research to better understand my students and how to best serve them. And in financial coaching training, we talk a great deal about recognizing and separating our individual biases. I don't think we talk enough about institutional, societal, racial barriers that our clients face. Right now, I'm working with a team to update Central New Mexico Community College's curriculum and integrating more discussion on intersectionality and institutional barriers. I believe that to just tell someone in poverty that they simply needed to create a budget and stick to it, or create a goal without considering these inequities, is a disservice. And not addressing the influence of these external factors can be frustrating for both coach and client. So what does this mean for an individual acting as a financial coach? In order to affect change, I don't think we need to go join a picket line in Washington, D.C., although I have done that in Albuquerque. But I can look at what I do have control over, and I have control over the process in my department, specifically around scholarships. So while the faculty and staff on our scholarship committee all wish for all students succeeds, they subscribe to a goal of rewarding the top students. And my challenge is to discern whether this is an unconscious nod to the culture of poverty mentality. Are we thinking they got to work for it? They got to earn it. So what is a top student? Who is earning it? Is it a young student living at home who can focus solely on college courses? Is it a single mother juggling work, children's school, and her own school and barely passing? Is it a formerly incarcerated person making the transition and going to school and making C's besides dealing with societal and institutional biases? Since our previous application process was so cumbersome, there were few applications. Could it be that those who had the time to complete them may have not been the one who were juggling multiple responsibilities and possibly not in financial need? Another challenge is in scoring the applications. Should a GPA be averaged in with the short answer score or just be used as a qualifying factor? Why do we require people to have an A average to get a scholarship? B's make degrees. These are really hard questions for people with a traditional view of student success. And so it's important to look at the intent of the donors. Since about 3/4 of our donors want their funds to go to help people in need, we need to make sure that our processes meet that. Some of the scholarships are specifically intended for undocumented students. And if we require all the students to complete a FAFSA, which is a good idea, it may convey to the undocumented students that since they cannot complete the FAFSA, they are not eligible for any scholarships. So posing these questions on campus helps colleagues to critically consider their own biases and ensure that our processes do not inadvertently perpetuate a culture of classism. So since making the changes in the scholarship application process, we've seen a surge in applications and awards. And since implementing a coach approach in the office, all staff is asking more questions rather than just giving answers. So previously, when a student inquires about a loan, the correct answer was, click here, click here, click here, and you'll get $9,500 within 2 weeks. The coach approach answer we're using now is, do you know how much you need? Would you like to sit with a coach to figure that out? Sometimes a student really needs only a few $100s and are about to incur almost $10,000 in debt. So that's a point of future research that we want to look at, is to see if this coach approach really makes a difference in not only the number of students taking out student loans, but in the amount. And so all of this was meant to bring about a culture change among staff and faculty in considering our processes and our institutional biases, and in creating a college-going identity in all of our students, letting them know that they don't have to fit a certain mold to be a successful student. So the students must submit a written thank you note to our donors when they are awarded a scholarship. And recently a student named Jennifer came in to submit her note for a $500 award. She stood at the counter with her 2 young children silently crying, tears just running down her cheeks. So I invited her into my office and asked her what all the emotion was about. And she told me she had gotten laid off from her job and she couldn't find another, so she decided to go to school. And she never thought she was smart enough, so she kept it a secret from all her family and friends because she was afraid to fail. The weekend before, her house had been robbed, and they had taken the laptop that she had bought with her financial aid. She had to do an essay over the weekend, and she wrote the entire thing on her phone. And it took her almost all night, and she said she almost quit. But the next morning, she opened the email about the scholarship that she had been awarded and was inspired to continue. She told me, a few months ago, I never even imagined myself as a college student, and now I'm a college student on scholarship. She finally told her family, and they were going to have a barbecue to celebrate. So I realize that many of you on this webinar probably do not work in a college setting. However, I challenge you to create a client journey. Think about the hoops that your clients have to jump through before even walking through your door. Think about the negative stereotypes that they've had to endure when seeking services elsewhere. And think about all that you require of them. Ask yourself if every single step is necessary, and ask yourself what you consider success. Thank you very much, and I would like to turn over to Luz Contreras from Wings in Dallas.
Thank you, Peggy. That was awesome. Hi, my name is Luz Contreras, and I am the lead financial coach here at Wings in Dallas. We started as the YWCA, an organization established to support women, and as the needs of our community have evolved, so have we. We now have 3 programs. We have Nurse Family Partnership, a program to help women become strong mothers. We have Women's Enterprise Center, a program that supports women with their small businesses, and RISE, Finance and Career, a program that focuses on long-term financial stability. So what you see now is what our members see when they first walk into our building. At Wings, we call our clients members, and that's to further reinforce the message that our center belongs to the community. We focus our work on building strong relationships with all of our members. So as such, all staff is trained on the financial coaching model. It really is our framework for interacting with our members. Dallas is a very large Spanish-speaking population, so in every service, a Spanish-speaking staff is available to not only discuss the services, but also the cultural relevance. On the right-hand side, you will see a front and back of our member card. So every new member is given a card, much like you're given in a grocery store. It's quickly scanned when a member is in the building, so a member could be here to participate in a workshop, to meet with their business mentor, work in our computer lab, or meet with the financial coach. It really helps us track our depth and impact of services per member. So today we will focus on RISE, our Finance and Career program. Here you'll see a clear pathway. We've streamlined our pathway and services throughout RISE, and we start with financial education in our 12-hour RISE series. So in our 12-hour series, that series meets for 4 or 6 consecutive weeks, each week building on the week prior, and our members really get the chance to explore their personal finances. You know, they learn about their morals or values, their needs and wants, their habits, and they really get to think and dissect about what's going on in their finances. So once a member has that foundation of education and are working with a coach on changing habits, then we offer our asset building products, which I'll come back and expand on in a second. All education and all coaching is offered in English and Spanish. So here is a snapshot of the other side of our building. You'll be able to see 2 of our coaching rooms. They're marked C and D along the wall. We have 4 coaching rooms available. We ask that all first sessions be done in person, but after that we offer sessions over the phone and via email. Most members will do a combination of all 3. What we have found in our Spanish-speaking community is that our members tend to prefer sessions over the phone or in person, and that leads to greater trust building in that relationship. 4 out of our 6 clients, four out of our 6 coaches speak Spanish, and from our experience, we found that our Spanish sessions take a little bit longer than our typical 60-minute English session. So we usually save an additional 15 to 20 minutes in those sessions. We've seen that our coaches tend to have to switch hats from financial coaching to cover some education, usually around areas of debt, credit, and banking. So we leave enough time in our sessions to allow for both the coaching and the education piece. So back to some of our products that we offer our coaching members. We offer 5 products, 4 are match savings accounts that are named after the asset it supports, and 1 credit building account that has a match savings component. So we'll start from the top. College Cash and University Cash are for post-secondary education. College Cash is for those members who are attending the lower costing institutions like a 2-year school or certification. University Cash is for 4-year institutions or postgraduate work. Both are an 8-to-1 match, so a member in College Cash will save $250, get a $200 match to go towards that asset. With University Cash, our members save a little bit more. They'll save $500 and get a $4,000 match. The First Home Fund is for our first-time home buyers, and our Business Launch Account is for our small business savers. Both are a 4-to-1 match where members will save $1,000 and get a $4,000 match in that account. All of our applications and our opening documentation is available in English and Spanish, and they're offered to all members regardless of immigration status. Coaches will also go to the bank to open these accounts, and we ensure that our partnering bank has Spanish-speaking bankers available to speak to our members directly. And it really helps build that bridge of trust in financial institutions. So a little bit more about our Credit Wings account. So being very goal-oriented in coaching, we always ask our members why they want to build a positive credit history. You know, what would they do with a high credit score? And we'll focus on healthy ways to do so. So for members who are looking to improve and show the new habits and payment history, we offer our Credit Wings account. It is a $300 loan, quote unquote, that is held in a locked account. Members will make those monthly payments on that loan. Those payments are then matched, and we are reporting to the credit bureaus on that activity. So after 12 months, a member will leave with $300 in those savings that from their payments, and they will also leave with $300 in match. Then they will use that $600 to further keep that momentum on credit building going by either paying down existing debt or getting another a secured card. So our space, our coaching philosophy with all staff and our partners, they really help us spread our message about the community and the coaching model. And we also find it very important for our Spanish-speaking members to share their story directly. So here you will see 3 clips from our coverage on Telemundo where members have spoken directly on their experience in financial education, financial coaching, and our products. That is Wings in a nutshell. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I will pass it on to Lucy.
Thanks, Luz. There we go. Again, I'm Lucy Ariano. I'm the Director of Asset Building Programs at Mehta, which is Mission Economic Development Agency. We're based in San Francisco in the Mission District. Our mission, we've been around for a little over 40 years. Our mission is that, being that we're rooted in the mission and focused on San Francisco, our mission is to strengthen low and moderate income Latino families by promoting economic equity and social justice through asset building and community development. A key piece of all of our programs is financial coaching. So we were really excited to be invited to participate and hope that we can share and add some value. So at Mehta, we are 3 main divisions. We are an affordable housing developer. We're also the lead agency for the Promise Neighborhood Initiative. And then our department, which is Asset Building Programs, has 6 programs within it. They're here, and they're probably a little difficult to see, but we do have a standalone financial coaching program, and we're also a Spark Point Center through the United Way. Some of you may be familiar. We have a workforce development department. We have a housing opportunities program. We also have a business development program, became a small business lender last year and a CDFI this year, and we're actually also the largest free tax site operating in the Bay Area, which we're in the throes of right now. What we really believe at Mehta to be the key piece for the over 7,000 clients that we're seeing every year. Actually, just a little bit of background for those of you who may not be very familiar with our area. As I'm sure you know, that housing prices have skyrocketed in San Francisco and that the economy has changed significantly over the last couple of decades. The Mission District, which has historically been a hub for Latino families, for newer immigrants, low-income families, has really changed as well. And as a result of gentrification and displacement, we've lost about a quarter of the Latino families in the neighborhood since the year 2000. Of those that are still coming to us for services, not all of them still remain. They may have moved to other parts of the city or even outside of the city, but are still coming back to us for services. And across the various programs, we see an income level average of $15,000 a year to about $35,000 a year, whereas the median income in the neighborhood is on a minimum of around $70,000 and upwards of 6 figures. So the dynamics have really changed in the neighborhood, and particularly for the families that we target. And so we really think it's important to make sure that we're having really culturally specific, really accessible, and really inclusive programming ongoing. Particularly post-election, we've really been looking at how can we be more inclusive of this with a lot of the really predatory verbiage and actual actions that are coming out from the administration, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we're hoping to do that or how that's showing up in our work. So the added value of our services is, as I mentioned, that all program participants do receive financial coaching. So if a client's coming in to meet with a workforce coach, that same workforce coach will double as their financial coach. And so all of our staff is also cross-trained. Most of our staff is also bilingual, mostly Spanish, but we do have some other languages represented as well. And the reason that we make this decision to integrate financial coaching into all of our programming is that we know that financial coaching is universal, or the elements of financial coaching are universal for everyone on this call, whether we do it consciously or not. We're really practicing the fundamentals of this daily. And as we have expanded our work into some special projects that access different demographics and different populations, we've seen that regardless of income, regardless of formal education or career levels, the community is still having questions and challenges around these issues, and so we want to continue to be as inclusive as possible. The key components of our financial coaching program are what we call DISC, Debt, Income, Savings, and Credit. We're working to strengthen this by having recently added also banking. A large amount of the clients that we're seeing come to us unbanked, and we are really working to target that because that's a fundamental that really informs all of these other pieces, as I'm sure you're aware. So when a client comes to us, regardless of which program they're participating in, they'll also, so they initially start with an orientation. They get an overview of all of the services that are available to them, and then they get the curriculum on the financial coaching model. We've actually really put a lot of effort. We've been working with IDEO.org, which is a design firm that has been doing some consulting work for us. We actually got a grant to do that, to really make sure that we are client-focused, and their emphasis on human-centered design has really allowed us to reshape how we talk to clients initially about how financial coaching integrates into the goals. So as opposed to, on day one, asking clients about what their financial goals are, we've redeveloped it to start asking about life goals and life dreams and what are the motivations that brought them there on that specific day. And once we're able to lay that groundwork, then we're able to start piecing together how these DISC components work into that. So given that we're in San Francisco and housing is such a challenge for many families, a lot of the clients come to us with questions around housing, are looking for a new place to live, not necessarily realizing the financial components that are required for them to access new housing, such as a credit score, a certain type, high enough credit score, being able to have a sufficient deposit if they're going into market rate housing or even below market rate housing opportunities, and even having certain level of income, which a lot of our clients are below even the lowest thresholds. So when they get to their first coaching appointment, we do a financial assessment that gets both of the coach and the client an understanding of where they are in these areas and how they're relevant to the goals that they're coming to us with. Thereafter, the client sets some specific goals around what they're going to do in terms of their financial coaching plan to help them meet all of their other goals. And we have quarterly follow-ups. At minimum, we have some clients that come much more frequently than that, as I'm sure you do as well. But at least on a minimum, every quarter we will help them rerun their credit report, so we do run that for them in-house, and then assess where they are at in terms of the different goals that they have set out. And when we talk about our community, that's expanded a bit, as I mentioned. So we're actually training 2 organizations. We were funded to share this model. We're currently working with an organization in Seattle and one in Denver that are focused on business development and home ownership. And we're seeing a lot of the same barriers and challenges in those communities as well, not just for Latino families, but even for non-Latino English-speaking families, U.S.-born. We're seeing a lot of the same challenges, and so we think that, again, this is really universal. We've done some work with providing financial coaching as an employee benefit, so employer-sponsored financial coaching, and even through the city of San Francisco, providing financial coaching to city employees who, do tend to have higher income levels, higher formal education levels, and are still having questions and challenges around some of these same issues. That really reinforces to us that the importance of really casting a wide net and being as accessible and as inclusive as possible. So we understand that a lot of the barriers that clients are facing are just really lack of knowledge, maybe lack of experience, or even lack of awareness about where to go for information around budgeting, money habits, mainstream banking, particularly if they are an immigrant, about American credit systems. We have clients that come to us that not only have never accessed credit in the U.S., but really don't even understand how the system works, and so they are just completely X'd out of it at this point. Where and how to access safe products and services. We know that there are a lot of predatory services and products out there that we find really get a lot of our clients into trouble, and sometimes by the time they come to us are already in trouble because of those predatory practices. Again, little or no savings. We know that a large majority of Americans across the board don't have certain thresholds of savings for emergencies. Specific to our population, and particularly, as I mentioned, post-election, immigration-related fears are a huge concern and something that we really want to be mindful of and have invested a lot into recently. And also misinformation or mistrust from certain institutions. Understandably, there is heightened mistrust around certain government institutions, particularly because of messaging that's come out of the administration specific to public benefits and potential repercussions to immigrants engaging in public benefits, which is a huge asset that we have been encouraging clients to use. And then particularly through our tax program, we help clients apply for ITINs, which are individual taxpayer identification numbers. So for those families who maybe don't have a Social Security number, but to provide them the opportunity to file taxes for things such as to be able to do the FAFSA for their kids to go to school, or to be able to access a safe bank account in what's unknown to a lot of people, to build successful credit. And we have actually helped clients with ITINs purchase homes in San Francisco, which is a huge feat, and we're really proud of that. But recently there's been a lot of fear about even engaging in those type of services. We've seen a decline in the uptake of certain products and services, and we're really working to share as much information as possible. There's a lot of contradictory information coming out, and there's a lot of unconfirmed information coming out. But we at least think it's important to share with the community as much as we possibly can to allow each family to make an informed decision and assess potential risk for their individual goals. In terms of, again, tailoring our programs, a lot of us that work at Mehta, we're immigrants ourselves. We understand the challenges of being undocumented, the fears around that. A lot of us grew up, in low-income families as well, and working to build assets for our families and for generations to come. And so we really try to lead with that and really show the clients that we've been there, and a lot, we're still there in many ways. And so hoping that we can relate to them and build trust from day one. We know it's a process, but hopefully building that trust and credibility can go a long way. In terms of making services accessible with logistics, even just understanding that different hours work for different people, that different locations work for different people. Childcare is obviously a huge barrier, and when we can, we try to alleviate that. Trying to meet clients where they're at in terms of language, not just Spanish, but even American Sign Language or other options, making sure that they're connected in the right way. And particularly nowadays, and then particularly in San Francisco, with regard to technology, we definitely understand that there are different knowledge levels around technology. And then I believe as Peggy mentioned, even just different accessibility to technology. We also have, we work in the schools. We have high school students saying that they're doing their essays on their smartphones as well. We have families that don't have the internet, and figuring out how to support them through that. And really making an intentional decision to focus on coaching versus counseling. And so we get this question a lot, even from clients around, well, what really does this mean? So are you going to just tell me what I should do and I should do it? And really making clear that no, that we're here to support clients, give them as much information as possible if they don't already have it, to support them making a decision for themselves, and for us to help troubleshoot along the way in case things don't always go as planned, but making sure that that the ball's in their court and that they're building sustainable habits and skills that they can pass on to their generations as well. In terms of next steps for us, we're really thinking about how to take this all to the next level, and we've really this year really tried to define what really is going to make a difference for a family. So around the milestones, we're trying to implement some milestones. So particularly if a client comes in with a challenged credit score, even a 50-point increase can make a huge difference, and it is a lot of work that goes into that. But if we can get a client above a 700 score, we know that that makes a huge difference, and really opens the door to new opportunities, particularly around housing and around savings as well, helping clients to establish certain milestones with regard to emergency savings that, in the absence of, can really have a domino effect in terms of holding them back in other areas. So we're really hoping that this is a value add for those on the call as well. We're really interested to learn from others as well, as this is obviously a work in progress. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for your presentations. As you can tell in hearing just the sampling of the information that we received from the full study, which included another 4 organizations in addition to these 3 who have kindly presented today, CFS was able to derive just an incredible amount of information and really valuable insights, which we captured in a research brief that is also available on our website, and I encourage everyone to access that brief for more comprehensive recommendations and takeaways. But right now, I will just briefly go over the 8 key areas for attention that can be helpful in increasing accessibility and inclusion of a financial coaching program. And these were really the key takeaways for the full study, and we go into greater detail within the brief. But like I said, I'll just kind of touch on the topic areas today. So to begin with, language. And this was an area that came up throughout almost all of the case studies, and all 3 of our presenters spoke about this as well. So making materials and services available in languages of the population served is just really important, as well as having access to translator services in the event that staff are not fluent in the language of the client. And then going along with language is marketing and outreach, and this really goes hand in hand with being able to communicate with your clients through language and through the kind of chosen ways that you describe the service. So in terms of making advertisements and outreach available in the language of the prospective clients, as well as making sure to advertise in locations or on platforms such as radio or TV that some of our presenters spoke about, where programs are most likely to reach the communities that they seek to serve. Location. So choosing a space where specifically in-person coaching sessions can take place is a really important decision that in a best case scenario would be made by the client and the coach together if that flexibility is available. Choosing a location that is accessible to the client in terms of convenience, and by that taking into account travel, childcare needs, etc. But it's also a place where a client feels comfortable and able to speak openly with their coach. It's really key to growing a successful financial coaching relationship and process. Content. So this is referring to not only the relevance of the materials presented and used in a financial coaching session, and also just shared verbally by the coach, but also literacy levels of the materials. So being aware of how understandable the materials are when read or related to the client. Being aware of the culture of clients and therefore the values and the behaviors that may be found in that community surrounding money and finances is crucial to not only providing a service that resonates with the client, but also as a coach, being self-aware of possible judgments surrounding decisions or attitudes of their client. And training. Training is an important resource that organizations can use in preparing coaches to work with populations that might have different beliefs or motivations surrounding money and finances. Cultural competency trainings can help coaches familiarize themselves with their client communities. But trainings can also be used to build self-awareness skills for coaches that are useful regardless of how long a coach has been coaching. Giving staff opportunities to build their toolkit with coaching skills is a great way to continually provide a coach the time to reflect on the methods that they use in their practice with clients. Program structure. So many of the organizations that participated in the study brought up the need for creating user-friendly program structure. And this means creating a clear process for entering the program, and that could possibly mean after completing a prerequisite step, a streamlined process throughout engagement. So for instance, organizations could possibly audit their non-client-driven activities like paperwork or data collection, asking, do these program requirements inhibit the coaching process? And then addressing the program exiting or end of service procedures, which tends to be a difficult time for programs in terms of getting that follow-up information that they need for the purposes of their program data collection. So one way to go about working on getting that follow-up data is being really upfront about the expectations of post-service follow-up or paperwork from the very beginning, and setting those expectations in the beginning of the coaching relationship. And this can often set the stage for that step, and then hopefully allow your program to collect that information that your program needs. Program change. All of the factors that we have described involve a process of examining the program and then coming up with ways to change your program to be more accessible and inclusive. But as we all know, change does not just happen, and therefore having an organizational process in place to identify where the changes are needed and then come up with solutions or ideas in response, and then actually implement the changes, and after implementation, evaluate those changes is really key to successfully integrating different approaches into a program, and is not easy. So it does require some organizational framework for both coming up with the change, identifying the change, and then actually integrating the change. And finally, partnering. Being aware of community resources that are relevant and accessible for your clients that provide services and resources in the languages that are necessary for your clients, and knowing that a referral you are making is a good fit is really important for a successful coaching relationship. Partnering within the community to cut down on duplicating services, as well as just being aware of how other organizations can work together to provide communities with the best network of services, is really a key step in furthering this accessibility and inclusion approach that we've talked about today. And now that I've provided that very quick overview of our study takeaways, we do have time for some questions that have been posed by our listening audience. And my first question that I'm going to read out is actually going to be directed at Peggy. Peggy, so you talked a lot about how some of the barriers or some of the really kind of intense difficulties that clients may face are actually larger kind of societal barriers. So how can you provide some recommendations or some different approaches that an organization can take to address these larger societal barriers that while we may all want to work to change, and we probably do, we may have to work around in our day-to-day work.
So I think to thank you for the question, first of all, and I go back to the philosophy, the underlying philosophy of coaching, which is that all people are creative, resourceful, and whole. And sometimes those words don't really resonate. As I've traveled across the country with CNM, people tell me, my clients are not creative, resourceful, and whole. They're broken. They have multiple barriers. They just got out of prison. They're homeless. And so I invite people to create their own philosophy. Whatever synonyms that you can use that show you that these are people who are creative, resourceful, and whole. Recently, I was in Denton, Texas, and a woman who works with formerly incarcerated people actually told me that every time she sits down, she looks at them and she thinks to herself, this person has sacred worth. Sacred worth. And I think if we can really embrace that philosophy, the way that we work with individuals will become a ripple. And if we can look at our processes, just little simple processes like how we create an intake form or how we distribute any kind of money that we do and what we consider successful. If we do it one by one, each person, it creates a ripple that I really think I may be Pollyanna, but I think that that's what changes society.
Thank you, Peggy. Very well said. This next question I'm going to direct to Luz, and this has to do with when you were describing the streamlining process that Wings has adopted, and it sounds like it's the entry point. It's the entry into the financial coaching program. So basically, how has this streamlining process improved engagement? And if we may ask, what prompted this change and what prompted this decision to streamline?
Thanks for the question. Well, we at one point we had more of an a la carte kind of menu for our financial services, which a member could come in directly through an IDA application, could come in directly to a class, or just come and say, I want to meet a coach. And what we found that although those members can be very successful, we weren't really setting up our members for long-term success without that coaching piece and the realization of, aha, this is what I'm doing with my finances, and this is what I want to change. That of course would happen through interaction with our coaches, but we really felt it was time to let's reevaluate what we're doing, and we were looking to also track to get deeper into services. So we have seen that more members now are taking up more services. So actually our average member can take up 3 or 4 more services. So they've been to a class, been to a coach, are in a product, or maybe also one was in a price center or in a family partnership. It has really just help us to have a bigger impact, and to build on that long-term financial stability. So that was our thought process, and we've just seen a greater increase in coaching. On paper, when you say, well, you're asking these people to do this much, they're not going to do it, and that's actually has proven to be false. We have a higher demand of coaching. In fact, we're hiring another coach now. So it's been really impactful, and we have really seen the change in our members.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to direct a question to Lucy now, and this is about, you mentioned some incorporation of financial services into workforce, and this is actually a theme that CFS has seen come up again and again in increasing accessibility to financial services, financial coaching in particular, integrating it into workforce development or actually into the workplace. Can you speak a little bit about how Mehta went about doing this?
Sure. So our workforce department is actually a little diverse. We have both youth and adult programming, and we have a couple of youth-focused training programs. So one's technology and one's more financially oriented. Workforce is actually our newest program, and so this is a few years old and the last program to fully integrate financial coaching as well. So it was, there were some bumps along the way. One is in terms of just getting the buy-in. To me, that was actually surprisingly challenging, but that was, I think, one of the most important steps in actually being able to integrate this. We know that, again, financial stability and financial health intersects into all pieces of our lives. When it comes to workforce specifically, your credit score, particularly in the technology and the finance fields, can actually hold you back from certain jobs. In terms of the youth, for example, we had some feedback that maybe financial coaching wasn't super relevant for youth. But on the flip side of that, we actually, in terms of wanting to set up our community for generational asset building, really want to start building positive asset building with the youth and having them be educated and start accessing, really strong credit before they actually get themselves into a challenge. One example that pops out at me was a young woman, I think she was about 19 years old, who was really, really bright, really motivated, and wanted to, instead of going into like a 2 or 4 year education system, wanted to access one of the technology training providers in San Francisco, which would really catapult her into a career in technology, making really good money, but they're very expensive. So, for those that are familiar with like coding boot camps or those type of programs, they're very expensive. And she did not, her and her family didn't have the money to be able to provide funding for this, nor did she or anyone in her family have the credit to be able to take out a loan for this type of opportunity. And so we were able to do some creative fundraising to get her into that program, but it really drove home the importance of, if she's in the program long enough and she's also receiving financial coaching, we could get her to a standing where she could potentially have taken out some loans on her own to access this. And so really just building off of the premise that when we talk about financial coaching, when we talk about our DISC components, they really show up everywhere. And so it's better to have a real strong foothold on them. And then the opportunities are endless from there, as opposed to working in the reverse. So I hope that helps.
I think that did. That was well answered. Thank you. And I think that we will probably have to end it there. I don't think we have enough time for any more questions, but I do. I have a few more questions that have come in, and I will actually forward those to our presenters today so that they can have a look at your questions, because there's some really nice questions coming in, but I don't want to go over our time, respecting our audience and our presenters' time in their day. So if that's okay with the presenters, I will forward your questions, allowing for follow-up. And with that, I would really like to thank Regina, Peggy, Luz, and Lucy, as well as my co-host and co-study creator, Sarah, as well, for excellent presentations and contributions to this webinar, as well as the study as a whole. This has just been such an eye-opening and really valuable and beneficial project. And just as a reminder, this webinar will be archived on the CFS website, cfs.wisc.edu, within just a day or two. Additionally, the study brief that we have referred to is also available on the website, and I will include a link to that in a follow-up email with the recording link. And the PowerPoint will be posted as well. Please stay tuned for an email invitation coming soon for our next webinar, which will be held in May in partnership with the Asset Funders Network and the Annie E. Casey Foundation. This webinar will be an overview of the findings from the 2016 Financial Coaching Census. Again, thank you to our presenters and audience for joining us, and have a great day.